So one of the common types of metaphor that comes up in metaphors of movement sessions are stage metaphors. These are classically representative in terms of performance anxiety. Now, performance anxiety can be a classic, I'm having to give a performance, so I could be literally taken to the stage. It could be that I've got an interview, it could be sexual performance, any form of performance anxiety. But some people feel inside relationships, inside social settings, they have to put on a bit of a performance as well. Sometimes with their in-laws in their family, that kind of stuff. So it's more than just high pressure, intense situations. It can actually be more of a quality of life issue. Now, stage metaphors are worth considering because there are so many different facets to a stage, plus also the metaphor that commonly gets represented. Now, interestingly, I don't think I've ever seen anyone who is a professional performer present a stage metaphor as performance anxiety. I have worked with performers who get performance anxiety, but interestingly, they don't tend to get a stage in their metaphors. And I suspect that's because they know how to deal with stages in part of the training and stuff. But that's a different issue. I want to focus on the typical things that people present for stage metaphors and performance anxieties. It's things like, I'm under a spotlight. And classically, the person will be in a situation where they're standing on wooden boards usually. They normally cannot see what's left, right, front, or behind because they can only see what's illuminated by the spotlight, which is usually above them. It's hot. They're very uncomfortable. They don't know what's out there at all. They just know that there is something or someone or some people that are scrutinizing them. And they're under the spotlight and they now have to perform accordingly. But they don't know what to do. Hence, very intense, anxiety-provoking situation. Some people, as I say, in their relationships or in their social settings or at work, they have to put on a bit of a performance. They have to make a bit of a show of things. For some people, there's very much a status element to this. They might be showing off. They might be putting on a show. It might be a good show. It might be a poor show. It might be a bad show. It might be a no-show. So a lot of this is around how we present ourselves as an identity to other people. What is the performance we put on? Now, if I look back on my own life, especially through my late teens to pretty much age 28, I think my entire life was one great big embarrassing performance. I didn't realize this at the time. I just knew I was anxious all the time and never felt very easy. Looking back now, it's moments of cringent worthiness come up for me. Because I realized just how much of what I was doing was a performance. Classically, people in their 20s are trying to acquire survival tokens. They're acquiring the resources they need for later in life for survival, for long-term longevity. So obviously, at that developmental period in life, we're acquiring status, tools, friends, resources. And often people will put on a performance to get those. The fake it till you make it is quite a common thing, especially in the personal development world. Now, one of the classic things about the performer is they put on either a poor performance or the role that they're playing, the thing that they're portraying, falls away and the real self is revealed. It's basically, I present a situation where everyone can see through the persona and see the real me. So I'm now seen, because of that discrepancy between what I'm trying to do and who I really am, I'm seen for being a fake. I'm seen as being somebody who isn't being genuine or authentic. Much like an actor is somebody playing the part of that person. Now, I know as a therapist, I've worked with a lot of people, their lives they're never really themselves. Their whole life is dictated by all of these different parts and roles that they're playing. They're never actually being true to themselves. They're not really being who they are. They're caught up in this momentum of who they're supposed to be. We see this a lot with things like when people are channeled by their families and by social and school expectations into certain career paths. The person wants, say, to be a labourer, but they become a doctor. They'll just make a very unhappy and not very good doctor, when they could have been much happier doing something else. So they end up being the fish out of water, the incongruity metaphor, where they have to be something they're not. So they have to put on a show. Now, this is very, very common. It's a major quality of life problem as opposed to something that is an identifiable diagnostic problem. It's more low level. It interferes with so many facets of the person's life. So let's have a look at some of the things about the stage. So we've got the features that occur within the stage metaphor. Right, first of all, what we have is the environment in which the person has to perform. Now, that is defined by the wings of the stage. On this one, there's a curtain there and some cupboards, and there's actually a wall. Up behind all the chairs, there's a wall there, and there's a wall behind. Classically, there'll be a curtain behind in the metaphor, and often there's a curtain that gets drawn or pulled back in front. So, invariably, the person is in a situation it's very hard to escape from. And I don't know if you've ever had to do a presentation. It's one of those things most people avoid. So the school presentation or something you've done in the job where you want to run away, you want to get away. Basically, you want the thing to end as quickly as you possibly can. So you speak really quickly to get it over and done with. And then you gabble and you get more anxious and stuff, and you just keep talking as quickly as you possibly talk. This is quite common because escape from the performance is generally prohibited by the cultural and social expectations of the audience and also of the performer. So escape is only permitted when the performance is concluded. Now, the problem with performance metaphor and stage metaphor is because metaphors lack chronology, there's no time in metaphor. There's no beginning, middle, and end. They're a fixed moment in time. Actually, there is no time in metaphor. The performance never ends. So the person may well have this performance anxiety metaphor which has been with them all their lives and will continue all of their lives. It never ends because there is no conclusion. There's no round of applause at the end where everyone says, well done, you did a great job, thank you very much. You don't need to do this anymore. Because generally, even if we know people are faking their identity and there's little elements where we go, well, I'm not so sure if that person's being authentic to themselves and to me, but we like them anyway or not, as the case may be, we don't generally point those things out to people. One of the weird things is we allow people to carry on their performances and to call people on the performance, to challenge it is seen as something that could be rude, it can be offensive, it can be quite an unpleasant thing to do. And certainly when I've had people do that to me in the past, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for doing that, I needed to be told, I probably still won't like you. It sets up this kind of problem because in order to maintain a friendship or a rapport with people, if we point out, I really like you, but you're fake, or I don't like you because you're fake, those kind of things, these aren't what people normally do. It's outside of the parameters of the social cohesion by which we relate to each other. So the performance doesn't end, and no one points out that you can stop the performance, and there's no conclusion. So the performance just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. It's a game without end. And I wonder how many people towards the latter years of their life get to a situation where they think, do you know what? I shouldn't have bothered. I should have just done what I wanted to do. I should have just been me for real. These are some of the classic things that we're seeing increasingly now as social expectations are changing. Around gender, for example, gender and sexuality. Traditionally, we've liked to think of everything in gender and sexuality as black and white. There is man and there is a woman. There is straight and there is gay, and that's it. They're the options available to people. But we know these things aren't correct, that gender tends to operate on a spectrum. There's a lot of people who at birth, their identity, their gender identity is actually uncertain until the person starts to develop. And if they go and do corrective surgery, they're going to have to wait because they want to see which gender that child identifies with themselves. It's a problem for the parents. Because everyone wants to know the name of the baby. So this is where those things of those amorphous names, those ambiguous gender identity names come from, because we have to name the child. Now what's happening is as more and more things emerge and as the society becomes more accepting, we're having a certain area of the population no longer having to fake their identity. They might be someone who strongly identifies with being homosexual or gay and any of those spectrum of identities. But they can't, because no one identifies them as that in growing up, And there's certain prejudices that exist, so they have to fake it. So a lot of this faking it stuff is about identity. Not everything, but it's about who am I being in relation to the environment and these audience. How many people get to the end of their life and they think, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I should have just been honest and just been myself. But then what would everyone think? How will they treat me? I suspect they will treat you better. Some won't, some will be horrible. But I suspect some will be better. So, this is the issue. We're on a stage. Escape is not permitted until the performance ends. And often in a metaphor, we're not given permission to end the performance. Now, there's other elements here as well. So, there's often things on the stage. There might be, for example, fellow actors on the stage. There might be other participants in this. There might be objects, there might be walls, there may be a door that gives you an exit. Now, other things on the stage, there's elevation, and this is quite important. Different stages are elevated in different ways. So this one has approximately a 24-inch, 2-foot elevation, not great, above where other people would be sitting. Now, obviously, from a performance point of view, it gives the audience a better opportunity, wherever you're sat in the audience, to see what's happening up here. Now, if this is my metaphor, everyone can see me. And it might well be that the lighting rigs prevent me from seeing them. So I can be scrutinized, but I don't know who's scrutinizing me. Basically, everyone can scrutinize me without my ability to hide. Now, there's other ways these can be configured. The stage can be higher, which of course implies I have to act a higher status, because elevation in metaphor is about status. So the higher the stage, the higher the pressure to be high status and to do a better job. When things are all very low down, the expectation set is proportionally lower. Now, we can have other weirdness. The audience could be lower than me. So that puts me in a position where I have to perform in a way that when people look up to me, it's deserved. And that's quite difficult in itself. It might well be that other people experience me when I'm putting on a performance, that I'm looking down on them. Now, I may not feel that. I might feel like I'm under the spotlight and that I'm very pressured and I can't escape this and I don't like it at all. But other people's experience of me is that I'm looking down on them. And that in itself can then lead to interpersonal things. Now, there's others. There's the audience, like the amphitheatre or the university auditorium, where the audience are structured going up. So that they're actually elevated above the stage. Again, it gives a different perspective for how people can see what's happening. Now, as a presenter myself, as a in part performer, that's the styling I prefer, because it's much easier to see the audience and what's happening and to interact with people. But for a lot of people, that increases the intimidation, because they are now in a position of both having to perform and look up to other people. And it might well be they don't want to look up to those other people, because if I'm the performer, I might be supposed to be in a position where they look up to me. Now, the structure of the metaphor now is incongruent with what I'm trying to achieve. So these status differences are quite important. Now, we've got edges as well. There's the edge of the stage. Basically, I could be close to the edge. I could be on the edge, such as here. I could be worried I'm going to go over the edge. I'm going to take a fall. I'm going to go down in other people's eyes. I'm going to go down in other people's estimation. I might let myself down if I go over the edge. But if we come back to here, what we have, there's no backing out. So because if that's locked, and this door is locked, or there's a wall or just a curtain and I don't know what's behind it, I can't back out. What's left for me is blocked, and what's right for me is blocked too. The only thing I have to look forward to is the audience who are looking at me, and because of the relational position, we're in opposition to each other. So stage metaphors become incredibly complicated in what we can start to deduce and infer, almost like forensically, in how people are thinking and reasoning. Now, it gets stranger. A lot of people, in their stage metaphor, when I ask what is out in front of you, they say it's an empty auditorium, it's an empty theatre, there's no one there. Basically, their performance is probably quite an old performance. No one is around anymore to watch it. They're putting on such a poor show, no one wants to see it. Basically, they're the only one that's interested in the performance they're putting on. Now, classically in that scenario, actually in most stage metaphors, the exit to the whole room that they're in is behind the audience. So in order to get to that position, I would have to leave this stage. I would have to let myself down, potentially, depending on the configuration, and move forwards, moving through the people that sat or stood in opposition to me. I've got to get through that in order to find an opening by which I can leave the situation. Now that can be quite difficult for people because, as I say, the permissions aren't there in the first place. Now what we have, of course, this is a difficult stage. It's a difficult stage of somebody's life. It's a difficult position to be in. There's a performance, there's an expectation of me that I'm unable to fulfill. I don't know the words, I don't know the script, so I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. Basically, I'm stuck at a difficult stage, and the person hasn't left that stage of their life. And this is classically almost like your Freudian stages of life. This is a stage the person is at. I've adopted, in this scenario, a higher status position in an empty hall to put on a performance that I'm hoping someone will recognize me. Someone might be watching, hopefully, but they're not. For me to leave this and to go out that door, I would have to move forwards. I will have to go down in your estimation. I have to let myself down. I have to go over the edge. I have to step down. There's a status thing. And then I have to move forwards through this and then leave the stage entirely. And then that would all be behind me. For a lot of people, they simply don't know they can do that. So if you're one of these people that's stuck on a difficult stage, put out the metaphor. What's it like? What's to the left? What's to the right? What's in front? What's behind? What are you standing on? What's up? Put out the stage and then put out all of the other details that you can find. What's required for you to be allowed to leave the stage? If all it is that you need permission to do so, I'm going to give you that permission. Just say, Andrew T. Austin says, I have permission to stop putting on this performance, to be true to myself, and actually reveal without shame who I really am. I can be me. You have to bear in mind, not everyone is going to like it. They won't, because some people will have a vested interest in you maintaining that performance. It's why people like to boo at the theatre. It's like they boo and they like to watch movies they don't like. People like to be critics. Everyone likes to have a role. That's fine. You can get through that, and there is an opening for you where you can then be free from that situation. I give you that permission, so tell everyone else too. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say on stage metaphors. Thank you for watching.